So we have a really exciting evening here lined up for you in terms of railroad entertainment. We have three presenters that are going to show us videos of various railroad subjects. Brian Buchanan is with us. He's joining us from Arizona, where he's on vacation. Gordy Smith is with us from the Twin Cities area. And Matt Brzezowski is with us from the Fond du Lac area. Excuse me, all three of them are railroaders, were railroaders. Brian and Gordon are retired, and Matt is a working railroader today. So they all have a unique perspective, and they all have some amazing films to offer for our entertainment. And we're going to start it off with Brian. Brian, come on up and give us a little introduction to your program, please.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Mike, for having me. And I guess a real quick thanks to everybody that's willing to serve on the board of this organization, too, for being able to make all this possible. Yeah, this is a show that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but I kind of needed the right audience. I was afraid that if I did it and didn't have the right audience, that people might not get it. It's kind of meant to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, kind of lighthearted, but it's something that I think in some shape or form every single one of us that's here can relate to, because it's basically how did I become a rail fan. But I'm lucky enough to have my grandfather's movies that go back to the 1930s, and I've also been lucky enough to find a really good place that was able to digitize them and do a quality job. So if any of you were at Beecher Fest, there's a couple clips that are repeats, but most of what you'll see is its world premieres. So again, kind of a lighthearted take from my thoughts on, like I said, becoming a rail fan. And I hope you enjoy the world premieres. So when you're ready, Mike, take it away.
Yes, I am a rail fan, and a railroader, and a collector, but it's not my fault. I didn't have a choice. I maintain it was genetic. You see, my grandfather was a rail fan. Who else would purchase a movie camera and start filming trains during the Depression in the 1930s? Like the Algoma Central, seen here north of the Sioux in 1935. It appears he had high hopes for turning his two sons, Robert and Richard, into rail fans too. He certainly gave it his all, especially with Robert, his first son, and my uncle. Here we see Robert in 1935, when he was 3, being exposed to trains in a controlled environment. I don't know where these two trains were going to meet, but oh well. Robert is starting to show promise. Ooh, this doesn't look good. Where's the flagman? They lived in Detroit, and soon field trips were being made. Here they are at the Michigan Central Depot watching the action. This looks familiar. My grandfather's father-in-law was superintendent of lands for the Algoma Central. Here is Robert and his brother Richard, my father, boarding a train at the Sioux in 1936. My grandmother's father was heading up the line to inspect some land. My grandfather put the family on the train to ride up to Searchmont, where they got off. Possibly to cover all bases, he also took the boys down to the Sioux Locks where they got exposed to boats. Fast forward to 1946. Back at the Sioux, things seem to be developing well. Don't step on the... oh well. Later that year was a road trip to New Orleans. We see the Azalea and the Hummingbird. And what's this? A camera! Things appear to be progressing nicely. And back in Detroit. Hey guys, watch the joint, not the camera. Robert still seems to be the developing Railfan. Here is a trip to St. Thomas and southwestern Ontario. Apparently, Robert has a friend along. Both boys have a camera here. This scene is the last we will see of Robert and Richard with trains. Both were now in college and would quickly move on to getting married, starting their own families, and working. We lived a half hour away from my grandparents in Birmingham. Often I would spend a weekend with them. They were still in Detroit. Grandpa had a double-track, O-gauge shelf layout around his basement. I always wanted to run it first thing in the morning. Grandpa was dusting off the old playbook. Start with the model railroad. Soon I was getting hooked. Next were the field trips. Sometimes even to the same depot where he had taken Robert 30 years previous. There were still a number of passenger trains radiating out of Detroit in the early 1960s, and we took full advantage of them, such as this trip up to Durand. My dad and uncle tried the boat diversion trick, but it didn't work. I stayed true to trains. One train ride my grandpa really wanted to make was on the RDC that CP operated out of the Michigan Central Depot in Detroit, through the tunnel to Windsor and on to London and Toronto. He wanted to make a round trip to London and wiggle us into the cab. On the day we went to make the trip, the RDC had been bad ordered and a conventional train was substituted. Nonplussed, we made another attempt and were successful. We had both the RDC and an accommodating crew. This is where I learned the term saw-by. Why people kept taking me on boat rides. Trains had my attention. Well, if a boat was carrying a train, that was a different story. We would occasionally end up on Detroit's waterfront at the GTW dock. One time he obtained a waiver for us to be on New York Central property. I just wish he could have picked summer to do it. He even made a token effort to suck my neighbor in. I'll give it to him, the old man was sneaky. When I was 7, he gave me my first camera, a Kodak Instamatic. He was reeling me in deeper. I was his first grandchild. He would see 4 more and tried to replicate the success that he had with me, but to no avail. Here's my brother, looking not too excited. But as for me, train-related activities became our mutual interest and bond. Now sure, there were the inevitable speed bumps throughout the process. But soon I was bitten by the bug. True, the argument could be made that I didn't have much choice in the matter. But I'm not going to overthink it. I enjoyed my time with him and found a hobby that gave me direction. And eventually my interest became my career. Technology has solved my one regret. Sometimes I would think these would be great train pictures if it wasn't for the kid in the foreground. But, problem solved. I now get the best of both worlds, me and no me. So thank you, Grandpa. It's all been a blast.
Well, give a hand to Brian Buchanan, everybody. Tremendous presentation. Brian, anything to say before we open it up to questions from the audience?
Well, just I hope that everybody enjoyed it in the spirit that it was meant to be in. And like I said, I think everybody might see a little piece of them in it too. So
Yes, indeed. Perfect. Thanks, Brian. I tell you what, we have a couple people who in the Zoom room here who've raised their hands. But before we get to the Zoom people, let's just say if there's anybody in the meeting room downstairs in the church basement, we'll let you guys go first. And then if you do have a question or a comment for Brian, please walk up to the microphone by Keith, and he will let you ask your question where we can all see you. Meanwhile, the folks in the Zoom who are patiently waiting, please just continue to patiently wait. Keith, do you have anybody there who wants to make a comment or question? I'm guessing no on that. So Ed Kohler had his hand up first. Ed, go ahead with your question or comment.
Ryan, I just want to say what package of nostalgia you put together there. It was wonderful. Even grow up in the Midwest. I grew up on Long Island, but it was wonderful, that stuff. It was great collection.
Thanks a lot. Luckily, I was kind of a pack rat and didn't throw stuff out. So, but thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Thank you, Ed. Next up with the question here in the audience is NRHS News editor Valley Hosky. Valley, go ahead.
Mr. Buchanan, you took me down the streets of, let's just say, late 50s and onward with railroading in Detroit. I'm a Detroit girl.
Oh, cool.
And, oh, man, my dad, my grandmother's, my dad grew up on the east side by the New York
Mm.
Central. I grew up in Detroit, New York Central as well, where I grew up just north of Junction Street in Michigan Avenue.
Mm.
Okay,
Okay.
and I just I have not seen um um you just gave me a wonderful gift of seeing railroading operations, oh well, long before I came along, but still in my hometown. I so thank you. Thank you.
Oh, this is, I love the interaction, Mike. Thank you so much. So Valley, thank you very much. Yeah, he lived by Southfield Freeway and McNichols. And we always called it McNichols. And somebody once said to me, they said, they said, I can tell you really know Detroit because you didn't say 6 Mile, you said McNichols. Right.
That that's UAD. That's UAD. That's University of Detroit turf. Really.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Val. Thank you, Brian. We're going to go on to the next question. Manfred Lorenz from Germany, you have a question or comment?
Yes, hello everybody. I noticed the overhead wire on the layout with your 6-year-old photo, or what it was. Was that actually energized and used as such, or just for decoration?
No, it actually was. He had a combination of overhead wire and third rail that was both actually used. He was always kind of a traction nut. It took a little bit of getting used to because he had 2 GP9s with a pantograph on top for, electricity collection, but you got used to it, and it looked okay. But he also had some like interurban cars, and he had a steam locomotive, and that ran off of the third rail. So it didn't look too funny. It was pretty, pretty well hidden.
So a case of sparks and cinders, huh?
Yes, literally. And I should mention that he was old school. He built that layout back in like the 40s or something, and he hand laid all of his track, all the ties and everything was all hand laid.
And it worked flawlessly? Or did you have any issues with the overhead?
No, it worked fine. By that time I came along, he had all the bugs worked out. So
Okay. Was it a kind of a standard thing, like you can purchase it, or was it hand built or self built?
he started putting it up like I think in the 40s, early 50s. So a lot of the cars were kits. He was an engineer, so he kind of liked tinkering and making stuff. So it's hard to answer that because he kind of just liked making a lot of the stuff himself.
I was referring to the overhead, because
the overhead.
these girders and so looked like not a self-made item.
I don't know if he was able to buy each, kind of section kind of pre-made, or if he actually had to hang it all himself. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Manfred. Appreciate that. I thought I saw Ron Burkhardt had his hand up earlier. Did you, Ron? Or was that just something spurious?
Well, I didn't realize what I was doing, but a great show. While I didn't get to Detroit in my rail fanning years, that's real great stuff that you showed. So thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Ron.
Well, thanks, Ron. And I haven't seen you since Roundtable about 20, 30 years ago. So good to see you.
Yeah, and back at you.
And Tony White, did you have your hand up at 1.2? I thought I saw your hand up. Maybe I didn't. Okay. Well, once again, everybody, a big round of applause for Brian Buchanan.
Thanks a lot. It was great showing it. Like I said, I think you were the right audience. So.
We were the right audience, and wonderful place for a premiere. Thank you.